So I recently took our Ford Bronco out for some wheeling at Rausch Creek Off-Road Park, and believe it or not, that was actually my first off-road experience with our Bronco. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about my thoughts of the day, and we're even going to show off some of the damages underneath. So if you don't know by now, I'm into a ton of different motorsports, but they're usually on the road instead of being off the road. That doesn't mean I've never had any off-road experience before. Back in high school, a lot of my friends and I took our daily driver trucks up to Rausch Creek, and it wasn't really the smartest idea, but luckily we never broke anything and always made it back. Now, later on in life, another friend group of mine showed me that you can have a ton of fun in like an $800 XJ Cherokee and just absolutely thrash it through Rausch Creek and not really have a care in the world. Now, I'm not gonna lie, in both of those situations, I had a ton of fun and always a ton of great experiences, and of course, just making memories with a bunch of awesome friends. But I never really got into it really on my own, and I never really bought my own off-road rig. But I will say, after taking the Bronco out to Rausch Creek and being behind the wheel myself, that might change here in the near future because I really found a love for this scene and I just realized how much fun you could actually have. So let's break down the day and give you my thoughts and opinions on taking the Bronco to Rausch Creek Off-Road Park. We'll start off with the drive there and initially getting there. To be honest with you, I was nervous as hell. I am taking a Ford Bronco off-roading and I don't have a lot of experience off-roading, and on top of it, I don't own this Ford Bronco. So the thoughts that are going in my head is that I don't want to total this thing because if I total this thing, then I'm not going to have a job on Monday. So as you can see, I was pretty nervous then, but once all of the guys from Tri-State Bronco started to show up, my nerves actually started to go back down. And that was because everybody there was just super nice and super helpful. I mean, literally we all got together and they were giving tips to everybody, they were giving different types of advice and things like that, and they even gave some walkie-talkies out to people, which I was a part of that because I unfortunately did not bring one. I guess I was a little unprepared for that. And on top of that, they basically asked everybody with a little bit more of a stock Bronco how comfortable you were with pushing it. And for everybody who wasn't comfortable with pushing it on the blue trails, they basically showed them an alternate route that they could take so that they could go a little bit of a more calmer and safer route, and then they would all basically meet up then together so that nobody got left behind. Once the meeting was over, it was time to hit the trails, and at this point, I was ready for the action. But once we got to that first blue trail, my nerves came back, I'm not gonna lie. So as we started to go into this first blue trail, it was pretty gnarly. I mean, there was a ton of obstacles, a ton of large rocks, and like I said in the beginning, I don't have a ton of experience with off-roading, so obviously I'm gonna be a little bit cautious. Now going into this, basically all I did was just watch the guy in front of me, and if he made any mistakes, then I just followed that same line, but changed up the line where he made the mistake. And by doing this, it actually made it pretty easy to navigate through all the trails throughout the day then. All I had to do is just watch the guy in front of me, and if he ended up getting stuck or hung up on something, well, then that's just what I didn't do. Going out with a group of people made this whole wheeling the Bronco for the first time way easier. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the first trail didn't really give me too much troubles, but the trails after that were a completely different story. After our lunch break, we ended up hitting this blue trail that felt like it was never going to end. There was multiple obstacles to actually get through on this trail before even getting to the biggest one there actually was. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at this point of the day, I am absolutely pushing the Bronco to its, I wouldn't say limits, but I'm pushing it pretty hard. Now keep in mind, this thing's a base model with absolutely no lockers or anything, and it's manual on top of that as well. So we were having some challenges here and there throughout this trail. And we get to this one part in the trail where it's essentially, one side is just giant boulders. To the right, there's some boulders that are a little bit smaller, and it's a little bit more technical to get through. So myself and another Bronco basically try to go through the left side with the giant boulders, and it was rough. Our Bronco didn't really have the clearance for it, so almost every time that we would get over one boulder, it would just drop us right onto the next one, and it just kept doing that over and over and over. And eventually what ended up happening was one of those boulders actually bent our ARB rock slider up on the passenger side and into the door. So when my cameraman tried to get out of the door, he wasn't really able to. He kind of had a NASCAR out the window to be able to get out of the Bronco. After we made it through those obstacles, a couple of the guys from Tri-State Bronco and I ended up hopping on the rock slider and actually jumping a couple of times to bend it back into place, and it worked out perfectly. My cameraman was able to get out of the door without having a NASCAR out the window, and everything was good. Honestly, if we didn't have those rock sliders and we took that hit, our rocker and our door would probably be pretty damaged, and I don't think I'd be recording this video today because I probably would have had to pack my box up. So after we ended up bending the rock slider back into place, we continued onto that same blue trail. And at one point, we're basically starting to go up this steep hill, and then we hook a right, and then it gets even steeper after that. But before that point, there's actually an obstacle right on that right turn. And essentially it's a boulder, a ditch, and then a tree on the left, and there's just a little bit of ground to be able to get a tire on. So what we ended up doing at this point, basically every Bronco that tried to get up this ended up getting high centered on the boulder. So we took a bunch of rocks and ended up stacking them in front of the boulder, so it basically created a ramp, and then the next 3 Broncos were able to get up this obstacle with absolutely no problems. Once they got up the obstacle, it was now our time to be able to get up the obstacle. Now we tried that same exact procedure where we stacked a bunch of rocks and basically just kind of made a ramp to get over the boulder, but there was a slight problem. Since our Bronco doesn't have lockers, we weren't actually able to get up it, and anytime that I tried bumping it, it would basically ruin our ramp to get over that boulder. So I had to pick a slightly different line than everybody else. So essentially what I did was, and this was with the help of everybody else too, I don't think I would have been able to see this line exactly without the help of everybody, but basically all we had to do is take our driver's tire and put it on that little bit of edge of ground that was still left, almost touching the tree, and then take our passenger tire and put it on the boulder. Now once we got it into that position, I was still having a little bit of a trouble because I didn't have a locker, so I figured I'd bump it and see what happens. And well, bumping it definitely helped. I ended up just fully sending it. I dumped the clutch, got over the rock, and then just kind of putted it after that to make sure I could get over the next giant stump that was in the middle of the trail as well too. And believe it or not, this was actually the highlight of my day. At this moment, I realized just how much fun I was actually having off-roading our Bronco. And it's not just because I was beating the absolute snot out of the Bronco. Well, okay, that definitely has a part of it, but the most fun that I was actually having was just experiencing it with all the other people. I mean, it's so much fun to sit there and have a problem in front of you and a group of people behind you, and basically to get all of your brains together to try to figure out a solution on the fly so you can make it over that obstacle or over whatever you're challenged with. And honestly, I don't think I would have had half the fun if Tri-State Bronco wasn't there. I mean, just hanging out with all those people, the fact that they're all super nice, super smart, and very helpful, it just makes the experience so much better. And in this moment, I also realized that wheeling isn't just sending it and hoping for the best. You really gotta use your brain to think through some stuff, and the best part about it is you get to do it with your friends. So I got the Bronco on the lift, and I figured I'd put it up in the air so you guys can see some of the damages we got from Rausch Creek. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I thought there was gonna be a lot more for the amount of sounds that I've heard while we were wheeling, but it's really not too bad underneath, and some of the marks that we do have under there are some of the areas that are beat up pretty good. I do have some solutions for that so it doesn't happen again in the future. So let's go ahead, throw this thing up in the air, and check it out a little bit. So before we head to the underside of our Bronco, we have to show you some of the damage to the exterior of the Bronco. Now, all 4 wheels definitely got some damage to them. I ended up smashing them off a couple rocks, but that's just gonna happen. It's the part of the sport. So we're gonna look at all 4 of these wheels. They all have some chunks missing out of them, and then after that, we'll show you some of the damage underneath the Bronco. So now we're moving on to the underside of the vehicle. Now it really isn't too bad under here. The rear took a little bit more damage than the front did really. Now, basically the only big spot that we have on the front here, and again, shout out to ARB, because if we didn't have this, there could be some other damage. So the only spot really here is there's some scrape marks on the ARB skid plate, but like I said, the front really wasn't too bad. The rear honestly took most of the hits. All right, so now we're at the rear of the vehicle, and this is kind of where the most of the damage is, even though it's still not that bad. So as you can see, our rear shock mount here got pretty beaten up on both sides. This one is bent a little bit in, but again, not too terrible. The arm here, it's got some scrape marks on it, and it does look like to be very, very slightly bent, but still drives fine, made it back here fine, been driving it ever since, and it should be good. Other than that, not too much going on here. Our fuel tank skid plate got pretty scratched up, but again, it's a good thing that this is here, because if it wasn't, then all those scratch marks that you see on the skid plate would be on the gas tank, which would not be good at all. Now, as far as these rear shock mounts, we do have a video going to be coming out here in the near future where they actually make guards to put over these, so that way it'll protect this from ever getting damaged, and it's a very easy install and a very inexpensive part, to be completely honest with you. So that's something that you'll see in the near future, so make sure to subscribe, because you'll get a lot of new videos here in the future, basically us doing some upgrades that'll be able to make it have a little bit of an easier time when we take it to an off-road park. If you haven't seen us take this thing to Rausch Creek yet, then I'm gonna link that video down below in our description. But if you have seen it and you wanna see more of this Bronco hitting off-road parks, then let us know down in the comments section below. Personally, I love making that style content for you guys, but I just need to know if you guys enjoy watching it. Now it is time to drop a gear and disappear. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, if you need any off-road parts, just click the link down below in our description.